Hi again, and welcome everybody to the Tech Home Builder webcast. I'm John Galante, president of A Ventures, and I'm your host for today's segment. We are pleased to have Roger Gregory, VP of Product Management with Ezlo Innovations, joining us today, and he is going to help us understand the opportunity and play for builders in the aging-in-place technology space. So for starters, Roger, please just give us a little bit of a backgrounder on Ezlo Innovations and your role.
Yes, certainly. Hey, great to meet you. So Ezlo has been pretty busy over the past couple of years pulling together what I call a true cloud-to-ground platform. We're a relatively small company, but we punch above our weight. We focus purely on creating a set of business models and where we wrap this IoT technology around certain segments, and builders are a big segment for us, and there's a lot of technology we have to offer. What distinguishes us is that we're kind of really the only B2B company that will deliver the total solution. And by that I mean cloud to ground, the apps, the servers, the devices, but also integrate with a whole host of other solutions. So you can then build an aging in place solution completely.
So, and your role?
My role, yes. So, fancy title, VP of Product Management. It actually encompasses developing the product strategy, working with the product management teams and the development teams, and essentially bringing together a set of products and services. And I want to come back to that. That service is a big word right now, because it's really about how can you bring together a set of total solutions and monetize them. And we actually provide the infrastructure to allow our customers to further service their end customers. So my role involves building the product as well as defining the benefits and then making it as a complete package.
Gotcha. So let's drill down on aging in place. What are the constituent elements of that technology? What does it do?
So maybe to kind of frame it first of all, right? So we've all been looking at home automation for a very long time. Home automation typically will have a controller, they'll have sensors, you can test the environment. What we've been doing is how do you kind of put together a service package that allows the technology to inform their household, and I mean the constituents of the household, to perhaps inform somebody who's not present in the house, and then have a system that will continuously keep you informed. So that's precisely what we've done with building together the aging in place. We've thought very carefully and worked with some professional outside of our space to figure out how do they interact with the technology. So we'll monitor the health of the home, but we'll also monitor the health of the individual. And then we can actually have through our cloud solution an escalation path to keep you aware so that you have peace of mind for the environment that perhaps the elder is living in.
Yeah. So what are builders are tangible thinkers, right? So what are the pieces and parts of the systems? What are the typical components?
So at the heart of the system is what we call an IoT controller.
Okay.
And we have different types of
the hub, right?
The hub, the language changes a little bit. You're absolutely right. It can be a very simple hub. It can be what we call like a bridge, Wi-Fi to some home area network technology like Z-Wave or Zigbee. For aging in place, we actually build and rely upon a more sophisticated hub. It actually has LTE connectivity so that we're not dependent upon the local broadband solution. So if that goes for whatever reason, we will reach the cloud continuously. We also put in there Bluetooth as well as their 345 megahertz, commonly known as 2 gig. So you have a broad range of different types of connectors and endpoints. So if it was a panic button or a switch or a door, and what that hub is doing is bringing all these things together and then giving you real-time updates on an event.
What kind of sensors are part of the system? Motion sensors, infrared, you've got panic type buttons and alerts, that sort of stuff. So tell me more about that.
So the way that we put so it all boils down to a use case. So first of all, I'll say by virtue of Z-Wave, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, you'll see a whole gamut of different types of devices. So what we try to do is to pull a package together So that
Right.
package may include bed sensor, chair sensor, motion, as you mentioned, lighting, more increasingly air quality. Increasingly, air quality is becoming incredibly important. So it can be humidity, temperature, light, VOC. There's a whole range of new multi-sensors that are coming together, and often the thermostat plays a role for managing temperature. So a Z-Wave thermostat or Wi-Fi thermostat. So yeah.
So let's talk about, and what about the services piece? You were very specific that it's not just hardware and software. There's a services piece. What's out there in the cloud from a services perspective?
Right. So what we've done is partnered with a few central monitoring companies where it allows us now.
Can you name names, or do you have to protect the innocent?
I think I should protect the innocent. I'll follow up with that one. But we've done several. The point is we've done several because it depends where you are in the world. And depends, because we do service more than the USA. So, but essentially what we're doing is providing the necessary signaling such that if there is an event, we can go through an escalation process. Okay. If there's an anomaly that's detected, we can inform a carer, a caregiver, somebody else. And if nobody else answers, we can also signal directly to a 24/7 center that is trained in dealing with elders as well. So this is not your normal security company. By the way, it can also be security. They have the ability to do the assessment and call emergency services. But we can set it up by identifying the type of sensor, classifying the information, and then redirecting it to an appropriate service. So yeah, and we do charge a monthly fee for that. But it gives you an example of the power of the platform.
So some of the sensing is environmental and some of the sensing is more closely tied to the individual, right? Yeah. Walk me through a little bit of that. Yeah. I'm also interested to know whether AI is part of this system or whether you've developed the macros and menus and they're static.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because it's very topical right now, machine learning algorithms as well. So one of the things that we've done strategically is actually to label the data and also to make the distinction that not all data is the same. Okay, so that's a critical component. And once you have the data correctly assigned and labeled, you're absolutely correct. Now you can use very powerful systems to then use machine learning and AI to look for anomalies, to correctly anticipate perhaps what should be happening. And we actually do have a number of customers that do precisely that. They, in a respectful way, they can, let's say, baseline the household, if you like. And then if there is an anomaly detected, then we can take the appropriate action. So
how long were you developing the application? I mean, what sort of field work, anthropological study did you do to determine these use cases, how the sensors or multiple events trigger something that needs to be responded to?
So the company's been active in home automation for a very long time. Some of the assets that we acquired and the Vera platform that have been used. So we're fortunate that we have a very rich community that's constantly coming up with all kinds of interesting things. Essentially what we do then is actually curate them. So over the past 7 or 8 years, we've really understood home automation. And then over the past 2 years or so, what we've been doing is looking at energy, looking at property, and looking at aging in place, particularly around that builders. So when you build a property, what happens at install? How do you place the sensors? What kind of information is there within the system? And how can you make better decisions once the home itself is occupied? And then more importantly for a builder, how can you run all that? How do you maintain it? How do you keep it all going? So and that's essentially what we do.
Sure. So let's talk about benefits. I think we've got an understanding of what the pieces and parts are and how they work together, but how would you characterize the benefits? I mean, I think the obvious one is actually monitoring the health and well-being of the occupant or occupants, but what other side benefits might there be on aging in place technology?
Yeah, so one of the interesting stats I always look at is there's a lot of people in this country. I think there's something like 50 to 60 million seniors. There was a stat that I read recently, like every day, was like 10,000 people kind of turning. What's interesting is that they're also quite tech savvy, right? So what we're trying to do is to create a system that is actually useful, and we use this moniker aging in place, but it's really about getting the home and the space to respond to its occupants. That's really what it's about. And if you happen to be of a particular age, what we want to do is to present that technology to reduce the friction as possible. So yeah, so it's really about understanding, controlling the environment, and then, as you mentioned, allowing others that you let in get access to information. So one of the some use cases we thought about very intensely are things like if there was an anomaly, or if grandma wasn't responding, there may be a smart lock in the house, right? Mm-hmm. We can easily provide a temporary access for somebody to get in, an authorized person to get in. Sure. Similarly, if there is an emergency and one of the environmental sensors go off, right, we can inform somebody. If not, we can also open a vent, open the doors. So there's a lot of kind of continuous use that we do.
So there's an assistive technology piece to this, correct, in addition to the monitoring.
Correct. And then the last segment, which I was going to mention, because there are a new set of devices that are coming to market now. They typically are kind of Bluetooth, but they will also allow you to have a secure connection to, a carer, blood pressure, pulse oximeters, air quality. So we're also looking at those class of devices to see if there's a way that we can securely protect that information and then pass it on to an appropriate individual.
So on the assistive side, is motorization, control of motorized technologies part of either the technology roadmap or here today? And are there special purpose devices that you've already got built into the network?
So we are inundated with new gadgets. We have probably one of the broadest ranges of compatibility and interoperability. And we get a lot of requests for motorized devices, informational devices, medical devices. So part of my job is really to understand what are the best solution, because I don't want to have this random eclectic mix of things. And this is why I use that word service. We're really curating it again to say, okay, where are the boundaries? What are the kind of benefits, and how do we pass those on for the occupant or the service provider?
Are robotics going to be part of this at some point?
You know what? I've shied away from that, partly because they tend to sit in their own vertical. Yeah. And they're not necessarily designed as well, in my opinion, to be kind of a fully fledged integrated. I saw some really cool stuff at CES, is some, other companies. And I thought, maybe not yet. But
service robots are not ready for prime time.
They're not ready for prime time yet.
Well, but they're ready to entertain us, I guess. Yeah. Serve drinks. So talk a little bit about the drivers of demand for this application. I mean, obviously, you guys have probably been studying demographics, et cetera. Right. Help our builders understand, some of that.
Yeah, so what you find, or what I've found with builders recently, they're trying to figure out how can they have a longer term relationship with actually the people that end up occupying the building space, right? So they're looking at building beautiful properties. Increasingly, they're getting requests for built-in home automation. This is now going a step further for aging in place. This is going a step further for understanding energy. Yeah. This is going a step further for these, what I call after the sale services, right? Yeah. And we are literally working with some big builders and big property guys trying to figure out how can they schedule maintenance, how can they get, as I say, after sale services and so on. So this is where the value is. So, they want to make sure it's done well and they can maintain that relationship.
So our 55 plus active adult communities, kind of the sweet spot target, that's where there's going to be home buyer interest in an aging in place technology system.
So we're seeing two things. You're absolutely right. There is, as I mentioned, the aging demographic as an underserved demographic, which is now they're paying much more attention to. I think with all of us being at home for the past year as well, people have figured out that you can't go visit now your elderly parent, but you still need to be able to provide some assistance, and this technology facilitates that. And then the other thing that we're seeing as well is more smarts in second homes, ADUs, MDUs, and so on, depending on the nature of the builder.
Yeah. So I'm a single family builder. How would I play in this space? What kind of relationship would I have with Ezlo or Ezlo's integrators?
Right.
How do I position this as kind of part of the built-in environment?
You got it right. And maybe I could tell the story through a product that we built around water management, because we thought very carefully about building a house. So we actually separated the water valve when it gets plumbed in and built in for the base versus enabling the smart home piece, which is many months later. So we kind of work with the builder. They put that ball valve in as part of their normal build process. Any plumber will recognize, and they'll know what to do with it. And then we have an actuator when you buy the smart home package that just sits on top. And then the journey starts, right? We start unraveling the services. So we've been thinking very carefully about those steps. And as I mentioned before, our positioning is business to business. So we're building the solution, the cloud, such that a builder could then take all the infrastructure and then do the messaging and the branding under their space. And unless I was to tell you, you wouldn't know it was Ezlo.
So do you see kind of an AgeinPlace Ready property where kind of appropriate infrastructure is in place and the active components are added as needed?
Absolutely. There's this notion of extensibility. We defined journeys, right? And we defined personas, right? So the vast majority are not going to be tech experts. They're going to be complete novices, right? So that's exactly what we did. We start with what I call a taste of success. So you might want to focus around one axis. It may be water management. It may be, as I mentioned, the motion detector, something that you put in the house when you're building. And then once the hub is in situ, you can then extend as time goes by, and then overlay new services.
Do you see the fit as active adult, or is it more the next stage, more of a seniors community where it's not that active 55 to 65 or 70 mode? It's more about the 70 plus years and trying to stay out of a nursing home.
You got it right. In our research, we actually looked at that entire arc, actually, and the cost goes exponential. It really does. So we kind of that's why we came up with the term. I don't particularly like it, nonetheless. Aging in place, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help use the technology to help you stay and gain independence for every stage. And you raise a critical point, because we have thought about, as you move from one stage to another stage, what kind of devices and services come into play to help. So we've made a strategic decision. It's mainly the kind of active seniors. And then as they get older, we are staying away from things that require medical assistance and medical care. That's something we can think of in the future. The only difference there is really the type of device that's in the home, and potentially some control around HIPAA and managing the data and understanding that sensitive data.
So what's your process for working with a builder in kind of determining strategy on this? Is it you or a customer success team of some sort that engages with the builder, talks through the demographic of their homeowners, home buyers, and kind of outlines a plan of attack, or what?
Yeah, so we actually do have a team called CST, Customer Success Team. And that's exactly what their job is, which is slightly different from a traditional sales role. So we have sales guys as well, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially what the CST is doing is trying to understand the use case, right? What are the use case? What are the benefits? What are the outcomes? And then essentially we'll put together a package to address that specific business opportunity. So yes, it is a consultative approach, but we also do what I call pre-packaged kits, right? There'll be a kit for this, a kit for that, so you can get started quickly.
Do you have sales and marketing assets that you can arm the builder with to present these feature sets, or even to demonstrate them in some cases?
We did a lot of demonstrations virtually over CES.
Okay.
And in fact, the demonstration itself was an aging in place demonstration. It was emulating what would happen in the night and controlling the environment. Yes, so we'll do demonstrations. We have some collateral. I'm continuing to build and work with actually external professionals who really know and understand this. You know, I'm just like a technology guy. I'm trying to figure out how do you shape the technology for that target. And then we also are working with builders as well along that journey, where to start and how to kind of get the service at the end.
What about multifamily? I'm not well aware of how active adult or even aging in place fits within the multifamily market, and whether those are rental properties or owned properties. But and you guys have property management solutions as well, but
absolutely,
is there some insight you can share with me on that? So what's the play on the multifamily side?
Yeah, so the insight comes from the fact that we're using the technology to give you a sense of what's happening outside your physical space, right? So the entire solution is what we call multi-tenant. So we can actually define a device, we can define a room, we can define a virtual space, and then we can combine them in any solution. So that what I've described is actually an MDU. It's a set of units, right? And more importantly, what we've done is we can, let's say the unit has a property manager. You know, she can have certain access to the units. But the unit, the people within the unit can also have full control. And if you're a corporate entity, you can look at all the metadata as well for planning. So we've really thought through corporate office, individual building, units within the building.
But talk about the aging in place piece with regard to multifamily. I mean, is that more of a kind of a portable solution that if a multifamily property operator said, hey, here's a demographic we want to go after, it may not be the entirety of our building, but we can provide a feature set that really accommodates this aging demographic. And are you working on plays like that?
Yeah, so what I was trying to describe was that is essentially there'll be a set of devices around each unit, right? And they would replicate. And then sometimes, depending on the nature of the property, there may be a property manager or a caregiver or somebody local, right? Or an office that's local. And that's the point I was saying, that information now could be then, if there was an event or a panic button or anything that happened in any one of those units, we would set it up so that that local person could immediately get notified. And if they don't answer, then we escalate. So yes, so we are thinking carefully about the living spaces and then how they're occupied. Single family, MDUs.
Gotcha. So let's wrap up with a little bit of your differentiation for Ezlo versus other suppliers and providers in this space. Where do you think your key differentiators are?
So the key differentiators are quite simple, actually. We strongly believe in what I call cloud to ground. So we'll provide a solution that gives the app, that gives the hardware, that gives the cloud infrastructure branded in your name. I mean, we're quite happy to use our name, of course, but if you want to have that relationship with the end customer, we can facilitate that for you. And we have the broadest set of devices for interoperability that allows you to shape the business case so you can continue that relationship with the occupants of the homes. And fundamentally, that's a differentiator that you're not going to find elsewhere.
So in my observation would be your industrial design, your aesthetic are not what would be expected on an aging in place technology. It's just much cooler looking stuff. And I think that's really important because nobody wants to feel like they're in a hospital with technology that they're living with every day. They're trying to have an independent, normal life, and for the tech that supports that to look cool and not institutional
Yes.
is, I think, important. So maybe you're too close to the industrial design to see the differentiation, but I see it, and I think that's a key for you guys too.
Thank you. And we actually employed a Scandinavian designer, a Danish designer, to help us with that, so that we
It's
didn't
got a
end up.
clean
Yeah.
European look.
So it was a deliberate choice.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of things that we put in there for that demographic. If I just elaborate a little bit, you can only orientate the device in one way. You can't put it on the side. You can't put it upside down. It's designed that if it's offset, it gives you a visual cue to say, well, that doesn't look right. So it sits a certain way. We removed all the buttons and the clutter. We have one button, and okay, it does multiple things, but we've done that so that you can have the simplest onboarding experience as possible.
Do you have other UIs like voice or gesture control going to come someday? I was hearing somebody, an integrator on the who does a lot of multifamily work, talking about gesture being important eventually.
Yeah, so with the gesture, I think the jury's still out there. We're still trying to figure out how does that work, particularly for false positives. Yeah. But one thing we did do in the app is that we created what we call a template to obscure all the complexity, so that if your use case is really simple, you can just have the devices with one button touch to get what you want. And we've also worked with other providers where they've designed, whether it be thermostats or devices specifically targeting the elder person. So larger screens, simple operation, and a lot of automation to kind of get you where you need to be. So yeah.
Well, great. I mean, I think this has been an astounding introduction to AgeinPlace technology. It sounds like you all have done your homework for sure, and it sounds like you're ready to work with builders and multifamily companies. So good luck with that. Keep us posted we are always interested in proof of performance content. Yeah. So your implementations and what the success is for the homeowners themselves is always interesting to us. But we do appreciate your time today. And until next time on Tech Home Builders webcast, see you later.
Thank you. Bye.